December in Manhattan was a special kind of hell for baristas. The holiday rush had transformed the grind cafe into a battlefield. Endless lines of impatient customers demanding their peppermint mochas and gingerbread lattes, each one more entitled than the last. My feet ached, my back screamed, and I'd been awake since 4 a.m. to cover Maria's shift because her kid had the flu. Merry freaking Christmas. Liv, table 7 needs clearing, my manager barked from behind the register. On it. I grabbed a rag and weaved through the crowded cafe, dodging elbows and shopping bags. Side, snow fell in fat, lazy flakes, blanketing the city in a white that would turn to gray slush by morning. Table 7 was a disaster zone. Someone had spilled sugar everywhere, left napkins wadded like tiny snowballs, and abandoned half a croissant like a crime scene. I cleaned it with the efficient irritation of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. That's when the door opened. I didn't notice them at first. Too focused on scrubbing a stubborn coffee ring from the table. But the sudden hush that fell over the cafe made me look up. 3 men had entered. No, not entered. Arrived. Like royalty descending upon peasants. 2 of them were clearly muscle. Huge, stone-faced, wearing suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. They flanked the third man like living shadows, eyes scanning the room for threats, but it was the man in the middle who commanded attention. Tall. Dark-haired. Built like someone who spent serious time in a gym but dressed like he'd stepped off the cover of GQ. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, probably worth more than my car. His face was all sharp angles and cold beauty, with cheekbones that could cut glass and eyes the color of Arctic ice. He looked like the kind of man who'd never waited in line for anything in his life, and he was walking directly toward me. No. Not toward me. Toward the counter behind me. I was just in his path. I stepped aside to let him pass, rag still in hand, eyes down. Men like that didn't acknowledge women like me. We were furniture. Background noise in their important lives. His phone rang. He stopped mid-stride to answer it, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and dark that made my traitorous stomach flutter. I don't care what he offered, he said into the phone, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through me. The answer is no. Tell him if he asks again, I'll take it as a personal insult. I should have moved. Should have continued to my station, minded my own business, stayed invisible. Instead, I turned at exactly the wrong moment. My elbow caught the tray I'd forgotten I was holding. Tray that still had a cup of coffee on it. A full cup. Extra hot. Time slowed as I watched the cup flip through the air with almost graceful precision. Brown liquid arced in a perfect parabola, catching the light from the window and landed directly on his $10,000 suit. For a moment, nothing happened. Cafe held its breath. The man stared down at the spreading stain on his pristine white shirt and charcoal jacket, coffee dripping onto his obviously expensive shoes. Then those ice blue eyes lifted to mine. I'd never understood the phrase, if looks could kill, until that moment. I am so sorry, I blurted out, reaching for napkins that weren't there. It was an accident. I didn't see you, and my elbow hit the tray, and his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop my rambling. Firm enough to remind me that I was dealing with someone who was not used to being inconvenienced. Do you have any idea, he said slowly, each word precise and frozen, how much this suit costs? I'll pay for the dry cleaning. Or, for the suit. I mean, not all at once, but I could do a payment plan, or you couldn't afford the buttons. The insult landed like a slap. Heat flooded my cheeks, but something else rose up too. Something that had got me in trouble my whole life, pride. Then I guess you'll just have to walk around looking like a Rorschach test, I snapped before I could stop myself. Maybe it'll be good for you. Build character. Silence, his grip on my wrist tightened fractionally. Behind him, his 2 muscle-bound shadows shifted, hands moving toward what I suddenly realized were probably concealed weapons. Oh God. What had I done? What's your name? He asked. Why? Going to have me killed? Something flickered in those cold eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or amusement. It was hard to tell with a face so carefully controlled. Your name, he repeated. Olivia. Liv Harper. I lifted my chin, refusing to show the terror clawing at my insides. And you are? Damien Russo. The name hit me like ice water. Everyone in New York knew the Russo family. Knew what they did, what they controlled, what happened to people who crossed them. They were the boogeyman that parents whispered about, the shadow behind half the city's politics and business, and I just poured coffee on their crown prince. Mr. Russo, I managed, my voice suddenly unsteady. I really am sorry. Please let me. You're going to work it off. What? The suit. The shirt. The shoes. The inconvenience. He released my wrist but didn't step back, keeping me pinned with his gaze. You're going to work for me until the debt is paid. I have a job. You had a job? He glanced toward my manager, who had gone pale as death behind the register. Mr. Patterson, I believe Miss Harper is tendering her resignation. Effective immediately. Of course, Mr. Russo. My manager's voice came out as a squeak. Whatever you need. Wait. I stepped forward, anger overriding fear. You can't just. I can do whatever I want. Damien's voice was soft but absolute. That's what money and power mean, Miss Harper. Something you clearly don't understand. I understand that you're an arrogant bully who thinks he can control people just because, tomorrow, 8 a.m., Russo Tower. Ask for Enzo at reception. He pulled a card from his pocket and pressed it into my hand, his fingers brushing mine with unexpected heat. Don't be late. I hate lateness almost as much as I hate coffee stains. He turned and walked out, his shadows falling into step behind him. The cafe remained frozen until the door closed, then erupted in frantic whispers that I stood there, clutching his card, my heart pounding with fury and fear and something else I didn't want to examine too closely. What the hell had just happened? You're not going. Ethan sat across from me at our tiny kitchen table, his young face set in stubborn lines. 16, he already looked too much like our father. The same dark hair, the same serious eyes. The same protective streak that made him think he was the man of the house. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. We can go to the police and tell them what? A man offered me a job after I ruined his suit? I pushed my untouched dinner around my plate. That's not illegal, Ethan. Annoying, yes. Terrifying, absolutely. But not illegal. He's a Russo. Everyone knows what they do. Everyone knows rumors. That's different. Liv. Ethan reached across the table to grab my hand. I don't want you anywhere near that guy. We'll figure something else out. I'll get a job. You'll focus on school and your scholarship prospects. I squeezed his hand before releasing it. I can handle Damien Russo. Can you? Question hung in the air between us. Could I? This wasn't some normal corporate job. This was the mafia. The actual real-life people disappear and no one asks questions mafia, but rent was due in 2 weeks. Thin school fees were piling up. And thanks to Damien Russo, I no longer had a job. I'll be careful, I promised. And it won't be forever. Just until I've paid off whatever imaginary debt he thinks I owe him. And if it's more than that, if he wants something else, then he'll learn that I'm not as easy to push around as he thinks. Finn didn't look convinced. Truthfully, neither was I. That night, I lay in bed and stared at Damien's card. Heavy cream cardstock, embossed lettering, nothing but his name and a phone number. Simple. Elegant. Intimidating. Who was Damien Russo really? The monster the rumors painted him as? Or something else entirely? I'd find out tomorrow. Whether I wanted to or not, Russo Tower was everything I expected and nothing I was prepared for. 50 stories of glass and steel, rising from the Manhattan skyline like a middle finger to ordinary people. The lobby alone was bigger than my entire apartment, all marble floors and modern art that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. I approached the reception desk feeling like an imposter in my nicest blouse and worn dress pants. The woman behind the desk looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, her smile polished and professional. Can I help you? I'm looking for Enzo. My name is Olivia Harper. Mr. Russo is expecting me. Something flickered in her expression. Curiosity, maybe. Or pity. One moment, please. She made a call, spoke quietly into the receiver, then directed me toward a private elevator at the back of the lobby. 50th floor. Enzo will meet you. The elevator was silent and fast, my stomach dropping as we ascended. When the doors opened, I found myself in another lobby, smaller but no less intimidating, and there, leaning against a desk with a warm smile that seemed completely out of place in this corporate fortress, was a man who could only be Enzo. He was handsome in a boyish way, with dark curly hair and laughing brown eyes. His suit was expensive but worn casually, tie loosened, jacket unbuttoned. He looked like someone who'd be fun at parties. "You must be the coffee girl," he said, pushing off the desk to approach me. "I'm Enzo, Damien's cousin and, depending on the day, his favorite or least favorite person. Olivia. Liv." I shook his offered hand. "I'm not sure what I'm doing here. Neither is anyone else, trust me. Damien doesn't usually recruit staff by having beverages thrown at him." Enzo's eyes sparkled with amusement. "You've become something of a legend around here." "Lucky me." "Actually, yes. Most people who piss off my cousin end up having very bad days." "You got a job offer." He gestured for me to follow him down a hallway lined with abstract paintings. "That makes you either very interesting or very stupid. Can it be both?" Enzo laughed. "Oh, I like you." No wonder Damien's intrigued. Before I could ask what that meant, we stopped before a massive door. Enzo knocked twice, then pushed it open. "Your coffee-stained sacrifice has arrived," he announced. The office beyond was enormous. Windows on two sides offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, the city sprawling below like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. The furniture was minimal but clearly expensive, all clean lines and dark leather, and behind a desk that looked like it could double as an aircraft carrier sat Damien Russo. He looked different today. Still devastating, still cold, but there was something almost human about the way he studied a document in his hands, brow slightly furrowed. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and decorated with intricate tattoos that disappeared beneath the fabric. He looked up as I entered, and whatever humanity I'd glimpsed vanished behind that wall of ice. "Miss Harper. You're on time. You said you hate lateness." "I did." He set down the document and leaned back in his chair. "I also hate coffee stains, incompetence, and people who don't know their place. We'll see how many of my pet peeves you manage to trigger today." "Is there a prize if I hit all of them?" Enzo snorted. Damien's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. That same flicker I'd seen in the cafe. Like he wasn't quite sure what to do with me. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "We have a lot to discuss." I sat, my heart pounding, my chin high. Whatever this was, whatever game Damien Russo was playing, I wasn't going to make it easy for him. He wanted someone to push around. He'd picked the wrong girl. Damien studied me like I was a bug under a microscope. A full minute passed in silence. He didn't speak, didn't move, just watched me with those frozen blue eyes while I tried not to squirm in my expensive leather chair. Point two could play this game. I crossed my legs, folded my hands in my lap, and stared right back at him. Another minute passed. "Most people look away by now," he finally said. "Most people didn't have a brother who made staring contests his primary form of entertainment." Something almost like amusement crossed his features. "Almost. Tell me about yourself, Miss Harper. You already know everything, don't you? I'm sure you had someone run a background check the second you got my name. I want to hear it from you." I considered refusing. But what would be the point? He held all the cards here. The least I could do was show him I wasn't ashamed of who I was. 23 years old. Born in Queens, moved to Brooklyn when I was 16. Parents dead, father from a heart attack, mother from grief 6 months later. Legal guardian to my younger brother Ethan, who's 16 and smarter than both of us combined. I tilted my head. I was 2 semesters away from finishing my art history degree at Columbia when the money ran out. Now I work whatever jobs I can find to keep us afloat. Art history. He said it like it was a foreign concept. What were you planning to do with that? Work in a museum. Curate exhibits. Surround myself with beautiful things and pretend the ugly parts of life didn't exist. I smiled without humor. Dreams are expensive. I couldn't afford mine anymore. And now you make coffee for entitled strangers. Made. Past tense. Thanks to you. You're welcome. That wasn't gratitude. I know. He leaned forward, elbows on his desk. Here's what's going to happen, Miss Harper. You're going to work as my personal assistant for the next 3 months. During that time, you'll manage my schedule, handle correspondence, accompany me to meetings and events, and generally make yourself useful. That sounds like a real job, not punishment for ruining your suit. It is a real job. One that pays exceptionally well. He named a salary that made my jaw drop. That's monthly. Plus benefits, including health insurance for you and your brother. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. That's more than fair compensation for the services I require. His expression remained neutral. At the end of 3 months, if you performed adequately, you'll have more than enough saved to finish your degree. We'll part ways and you'll never have to see me again. And if I refuse, then you walk out of here with nothing. No job, no reference, no prospects. I'm sure the other cafe managers in the city will be thrilled to hire someone who was fired from the grind for assaulting a customer. I didn't assault you. It was an accident. Semantics. He waved a dismissive hand. The choice is yours, Miss Harper. Financial security for you and your brother. Or pride and poverty. Which matters more? I wanted to tell him to shove his offer somewhere anatomically creative. Wanted to stand up, walk out, and never look back. But Ethan's face swam in my mind. His worn backpack. His 2 small cleats. His dreams of college that got smaller every time I couldn't make ends meet. 3 months, I said through gritted teeth. Not a day more. 3 months. You have my word. The word of a Russo. I'm sure that's worth a lot. It's worth everything. For the first time, real emotion flickered in his eyes. Something hard and cold and deadly serious. When I give my word, I keep it. Always. Can you say the same, Miss Harper? I guess we'll find out. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder, sliding it across to me. Your contract. Read it carefully. Have a lawyer look it over if you want. I'll need your signature by end of business today. I flipped through the pages, scanning the dense legal language. It seemed straightforward enough. Employment terms, confidentiality clauses, compensation details. But nothing that screamed trap or enslavement. What's the catch? Excuse me. There's always a catch with men like you. I set the folder down. What aren't you telling me? Damien's eyes narrowed slightly. You're more perceptive than I expected. I'm a lot of things you don't expect. So, the catch. He was silent for a moment, considering. Then he rose from his chair and moved to the window, presenting me with his back. Without his jacket, I could see how his shirt stretched across broad shoulders, how his slacks hugged narrow hips, not that I was looking. I have enemies, he said quietly. People who would love to hurt me by hurting the people close to me. As my assistant, you'll be in proximity to that danger. So I might get killed because someone wants to get to you. The possibility exists, yes. And you're just telling me this? Most employers bury the death risks in the fine print. I'm not most employers. He turned to face me, and there was something almost like respect in his expression. You struck me as someone who would want to know what she was walking into. Was I wrong? No. I stood, matching his posture. But you could have just let me go. found another assistant who didn't pour coffee on you. Why me? Because you didn't apologize. I apologized multiple times. You said the words, but you didn't mean them. He moved closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. When I grabbed your wrist, you should have been terrified. Instead, you insulted me. Called me a Rorschach test. It was accurate. It was brave. Or stupid. I haven't decided which. He studied me with that unsettling intensity. People fear me, Miss Harper. They bow, they scrape, they tell me whatever they think I want to hear. You looked me in the eye and told me to build character. And that made you want to hire me. It made me want to understand you. His voice dropped to something almost intimate. I collect interesting things, Miss Harper. Art, rare books, unusual experiences. You qualify. I'm not a thing to be collected. No, you're not. Something shifted in his gaze. That's what makes you interesting. We stood there, barely a foot apart, the air between us charged with something I couldn't name. His cologne wrapped around me, dark and expensive. His eyes held mine with magnetic force, then Enzo's voice shattered the moment. Damien, your 10:30 is here. He appeared in the doorway, glancing between us with poorly concealed curiosity. Should I tell them to wait? Damien stepped back, his professional mask sliding back into place. No. Show them in. He turned to me. Enzo will get you set up in your office. We'll continue this later. I haven't signed the contract yet. You will. It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. You're too smart to let pride cost you everything. He was right. I hated that he was right. 3 months, I said, picking up the folder. And I wanted in writing that if I die because of your enemies, my brother gets my salary for the full term. Done. And I want a clothing allowance. If I'm going to be seen with you, I can't wear Target. Already included. Page 7, paragraph 3. I had nothing left to argue about, which meant I had no more excuses. Fine. I extended my hand. You have a deal, Mr. Russo. His hand enveloped mine, warm and strong, sending an unwanted jolt up my arm. Damien. What? If you're going to be at my side for 3 months, you'll call me Damien. Mr. Russo makes me feel like my father. Fine. Damien. The name felt strange on my tongue. Too personal. But don't expect me to like you. I don't expect anything, Miss Harper. His thumb brushed across my knuckles, so light I almost thought I'd imagined it. Accept excellence. And discretion. And absolute loyalty for the duration of your employment. Loyalty is earned, not commanded. Then I'll have to earn it. He released my hand. Won't I? Enzo showed me to an office that was bigger than my living room. This is mine. I ran my hand along the sleek desk, marveling at the view of the city below. All yours. Damien had it set up this morning. Enzo perched on the edge of a credenza, watching me with amusement. I don't think he expected you to actually show up. Then why prepare an office? Because he hoped you would. Enzo shrugged. My cousin isn't good with people. He's brilliant at business, terrifying at negotiation, but actual human interaction? Not his strong suit. I noticed. But he's not a bad person. Not really. Enzo's expression grew serious. He's had to be hard to survive. Our family, our world, it doesn't reward softness. But underneath all that ice, there's someone who actually gives a damn. He just doesn't know how to show it. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the first person he's shown any interest in since. Enzo stopped, shaking his head. Doesn't matter. Just don't write him off, okay? Give him a chance to surprise you. Before I could respond, my new phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, your first task. Dry cleaning pickup at Armani Madison Avenue 2 p.m. Don't be late. And so it begins, Enzo said, reading over my shoulder. Welcome to the Russo Circus, Liv. Try to enjoy the show. The next 2 weeks were a crash course in the life of Damien Russo that I accompanied him to meetings with men who looked like they could kill without hesitation. Organized dinners at restaurants where the cheapest entree cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Fielded calls from politicians, celebrities, and people whose names I recognized from Forbes lists. Through it all, Damien remained an enigma, cold in public, colder in private. Speaking to me only when necessary, his instructions clipped and precise. I was furniture to him. A useful tool. Nothing more, but sometimes when he thought I wasn't watching, I caught him looking at me. Not with desire or anger, but with something that looked almost like confusion. Like he couldn't figure out why I was still there. To be fair, sometimes I couldn't either. You're still here, he said one evening, finding me in my office at nearly midnight. The workday ended hours ago. You're still here too. I own the building. And I have expense reports to finish. I didn't look up from my screen. Unless you want to explain to accounting why your black card was charged for 12 bottles of wine at a business dinner. It was a negotiation. Wine loosens tongues. Wine at those prices should do a lot more than loosen tongues. He moved further into my office, his reflection visible in the dark window. He'd lost his jacket and tie somewhere, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal those intricate tattoos. You haven't asked about them, he said, following my gaze to his arms. The tattoos? It's not my business. Most people ask. Or stare and pretend they're not curious. I'm not most people. You've mentioned. He was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he sat in the chair across from my desk. The same position I'd occupied in his office 2 weeks ago. They're a map, he said quietly. Everyone represents something. Someone. A reminder of who I am and where I came from. I finally looked up. Why are you telling me this? Because you didn't ask. And that makes me want to answer. His blue eyes held mine. You're frustrating, Miss Harper. You don't behave the way you're supposed to. How am I supposed to behave? Afraid. Resentful. Counting the days until you can leave. He tilted his head. Instead, you work harder than anyone on my staff. You challenge me in meetings when you think I'm wrong. You told my CFO his projections were mathematically impossible, and you were right. He was off by 6 million. Anyone would have noticed. No one else did. Or no one else had the courage to say so. He leaned forward. Why do you care? This is just a job. A temporary arrangement. Because if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well. That's who I am. Even for someone you don't like? Who says I don't like you? Question surprised us both. I saw his eyes widen fractionally before that iron control slammed back into place. You made your feelings clear the day we met. I made my feelings about being bullied clear. That's different. I saved my work and closed the laptop. You're difficult and demanding, and you have the emotional range of a glacier. But you're also fair. You don't ask anyone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. And when Martinez in security had his daughter's medical emergency, you paid for everything anonymously. How do you know about that? I'm your assistant. I know everything. I stood, gathering my things. You're not the villain you want everyone to think you are, Damien. You just play one on TV. I headed for the door, but his voice stopped me. Olivia. I turned. He'd risen from the chair and stood silhouetted against the city lights. Tomorrow night, there's a charity gala. I need you there. That's not in my calendar. I'm adding it now. He moved toward me, stopping just inside my personal space. Wear something appropriate. I'll send options to your apartment. I can dress myself. I'm sure you can. But this event is important. I need you to look like you belong. Because appearances matter. 'Cause you'll be entering my world. Fully. And there are people there who will look for any weakness to exploit. His hand rose, brushing a strand of hair from my face before I could react. I won't let them use you against me. What makes you think they could? Because in 2 weeks, you become more essential to my operation than people who've worked for me for years. His voice dropped. And that terrifies me. He left before I could respond, and I stood in my empty office, heart racing, skin burning where his fingers had touched. What the hell was happening between us? The dress arrived at my apartment the next morning, not options, as Damien had promised. Just one. A single garment bag hanging from my door when I opened it, accompanied by a box containing shoes, jewelry, and a handwritten note. This color suits you. Inside the bag was a gown that made me forget how to breathe, emerald green silk that seemed to glow from within. Trapless, with a sweetheart neckline and a slit that would reveal my leg to mid-thigh. Simple in design but devastating in execution. The kind of dress that transformed ordinary women into goddesses. Holy crap. Ethan appeared in my doorway, sleep-rumpled and wide-eyed. Did your boss send that? Apparently. That's not weird at all. It's for a work event. I need to look appropriate. Liv. My brother's voice carried warning. What's really going on with this guy? Nothing. He's my employer. That's it. Employers don't send dresses that cost more than cars. Ethan crossed his arms, looking far too much like our father in that moment. Is he expecting something? No. He's been perfectly professional. Mostly. Except for the way he'd touched my face last night. Except for the way his voice had dropped when he'd called me essential. Except for the way my heart raced every time he walked into a room. I don't like it, Ethan said. You don't have to like it. You just have to trust me. I kissed his forehead like I'd done since he was a toddler. I know what I'm doing. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I'd been here before, on student tours and free admission nights, wandering through galleries with my sketchbook and my dreams. But I'd never seen it like this. Never seen the Great Hall transformed into a winter wonderland, dripping with crystals and candlelight, filled with people whose collective net worth could probably solve world hunger, and I'd never walked in on the arm of Damien Russo. He'd arrived at my apartment at exactly 7 p.m., dressed in a tuxedo that made him look like a fallen angel. Dark hair perfectly styled, blue eyes even more striking against the black and white of his formal wear. The tattoos on his hands were the only hint of the danger beneath the elegance. You look. He'd stopped in my doorway, his usual composure cracking for just a moment. Acceptable. Acceptable. Wow. You really know how to flatter a girl. I don't flatter. I state facts. But something warm had flickered in his eyes. The car is waiting. Now, walking through the museum's grand entrance, I understood why appearances mattered so much to him. Every eye in the room tracked our movement. Whispers spread like wildfire, speculation about who I was and what I meant to the infamous Damien Russo. Smile, he murmured, his hand warm at the small of my back. You look like you're walking to your execution. Maybe I am. Dramatic. I like it. He guided me deeper into the crowd. Stay close. Don't accept drinks from anyone but me or Enzo. And if anyone asks, I'm your assistant. We're here in a professional capacity. Smart girl. The next hour was a blur of introductions and air kisses. Politicians whose faces I recognized from the news. Socialites whose names appeared regularly in gossip columns. Business titans who looked at Damien with a mixture of respect and fear. Through it all, Damien kept me close, his hand on my back, his arm brushing mine, small touches that felt like brands against my skin. You're doing well, he said during a brief respite near the bar. Better than I expected. Did you expect me to embarrass you? I expected you to hate every minute of this. I do hate every minute of this. I accepted the champagne he offered. But I'm good at pretending. Another thing we have in common. Before I could ask what he meant, a new voice cut through the ambient noise. Damien Rousseau. Slumming it with the common folk tonight? The man who approached was handsome in a way that felt manufactured. 2 white teeth, 2 smooth skin, eyes that calculated rather than connected. He wore his tuxedo like armor, his smile like a weapon. Ricardo. Damien's voice could have frozen the champagne in my glass. I didn't realize you'd be here. I go where the money goes. Same as you. Ricardo's gaze slid to me, lingering in a way that made my skin crawl. And who is this lovely creature? Don't tell me you finally found someone willing to tolerate your personality. Olivia Harper. My assistant. Assistant. Ricardo drew out the word suggestively. Is that what we're calling them now? It's what I'm calling her because it's what she is. Damien's hand tightened at my back. Don't you have someone else to bother? Actually, I was hoping for a word. In private. Ricardo's smile never wavered. Business matters. I'm sure your assistant can entertain herself. Damien hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave me alone. I touched his arm lightly. I'll be fine. Enzo's right over there. He looked at me for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. Don't wander off. I'll be back in 10 minutes. The men disappeared toward a private alcove, leaving me alone in a sea of strangers. I made my way toward Enzo, but a waiter stepped into my path with a tray of canapes, and by the time I'd navigated around him, I'd lost sight of Damien's cousin Great. Alone at a party full of people who probably spent more on haircuts than I earned in a month. Lost. I turned to find a woman watching me with knowing eyes. She was beautiful in that timeless way that suggested either excellent genes or excellent surgeons. Blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, diamonds glittering at her throat. Just looking for someone, I said. Damien's cousin? He's near the Renoir, pretending not to watch you. She smiled at my surprise. I'm Victoria, an old friend of the Rousseau family. Olivia. I know. You're all anyone's talking about tonight. She moved closer, her voice dropping conspiratorially. The girl who poured coffee on Damien Rousseau and lived to tell the tale. Some people are calling it the bravest thing they've ever seen. It was an accident. Of course it was. Her smile suggested she didn't believe me. But accident or not, you've accomplished something remarkable. You've made Damien notice you. He doesn't notice anyone. I'm just his assistant. Darling, I've known Damien for 15 years. I've seen him with assistants, lovers, enemies, allies. He's never looked at any of them the way he looks at you. She sipped her champagne. Be careful. Men like Damien don't know how to love gently. When they fall hard. And they expect the same in return. Before I could respond, a hand closed around my arm. Miss Harper. Ricardo Vance had returned without Damien. I was hoping we could chat. Where's Damien? Detained. Business matters. His grip tightened as I tried to pull away. I have a proposition for you. I'm not interested. You haven't heard it yet. He steered me toward a quieter corner, his strength surprising in someone so polished. I'm curious about you, Olivia. A nobody barista who suddenly becomes Damien Rousseau's constant companion. It's quite the Cinderella story. It's a job. Nothing more. Is it? His eyes bore into mine. See, I think you're more than you appear. I think Damien sees something in you that he values. And that makes you very interesting to me. Let go of my arm. In a moment. First, I want you to understand something. He leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear. Damien Rousseau has taken things from me. Territory, business, people I cared about. I've been looking for a way to return the favor. Cold fear trickled down my spine. If you think you can use me, I think you're going to help me whether you want to or not. His smile turned cruel. 'Cause I know about your brother, Olivia. Ethan, isn't it? 16 years old, junior at Brooklyn Technical, dreams of Columbia like his sister. Don't. Such a promising young man. It would be a shame if something happened to him. A mugging gone wrong. A hit-and-run accident. These things happen in the city, don't they? You bastard. I'm a businessman. I use the tools available to me. He released my arm, stepping back with that manufactured smile. I'll be in touch, Miss Harper. In the meantime, I'd appreciate if you kept our conversation private. Damien doesn't need to know about our little arrangement. Yet. He melted into the crowd, leaving me shaking with fear and rage. Liv. Enzo materialized beside me, his expression concerned. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Where's Damien? On his way back. Ricardo kept him longer than expected. Enzo studied my face. What happened? I couldn't tell him. Couldn't risk Ethan's safety on the chance that Enzo could help. Nothing. I just need some air. I fled toward the nearest terrace before he could stop me. The cold December wind hit me like a slap, clearing my head but doing nothing for the terror coiling in my stomach. Ricardo Vance had threatened my brother. Had made it clear he intended to use me against Damien. What was I going to do? Olivia. Damien's voice came from behind me. I turned to find him stepping onto the terrace, his brow furrowed with concern. Enzo said you were upset. What did Ricardo say to you? Nothing. We just talked. Don't lie to me. He moved closer, his eyes searching my face. I know Ricardo. I know how he operates. Tell me what he said. Damien, tell me. His hands found my shoulders, his grip firm but not painful. I can't protect you if I don't know what I'm protecting you from. The words wanted to spill out. The threats, the fear, the impossible position I'd been put in. But Ethan's face swam in my mind. His smile. His dreams. Everything Ricardo could take away with a single order. He just made some comments. About us. About what I'm really doing here. I forced my voice to steady. It was nothing I can't handle. Damien studied me for a long moment. You're lying. I'm telling you what you need to know. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. I met his eyes. But it's all you're getting. Silence stretched between us. The city glittered below, indifferent to the drama playing out on this terrace. The music from inside drifted through the doors, something slow and romantic that seemed to mock our tension. Dance with me, Damien said suddenly. What? Dance with me. He pulled me closer, one hand finding my waist, the other capturing my fingers. If you won't talk to me, at least let me pretend everything is normal. Nothing about this is normal. I know. He began to move, guiding me into a slow waltz. But I've learned to take moments of peace where I can find them. We danced in silence, our bodies moving together with surprising ease. His hand burned through the silk at my waist. His eyes never left mine. I meant what I said last night, he murmured. You've become essential. More than I intended. Damien, I know this started as a punishment. A game maybe to teach you a lesson about challenging men like me. His voice dropped lower. But somewhere along the way, it became something else. What? I don't know yet. His forehead touched mine. But I won't find out. Kissed me soft at first, questioning. Giving me every chance to pull away. When I leaned into him instead, he deepened the kiss into something that made my knees buckle. The cold vanished. The fear faded. There was only Damien, his arms around me, his lips on mine, his heart beating against my chest. When we finally separated, both breathless, his eyes held a warmth I'd never seen before. Come home with me, he whispered. Not for work. Not for obligation. Just be with me. I should have said no. Should have remembered Ricardo's threats, the danger closing in from all sides. Instead, I said yes. I woke up in Damien's bed with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Forgot the gala, the kiss, the decision that had brought me here. Then I felt the warmth of his body beside mine, his arm draped possessively across my waist, and everything came flooding back. We hadn't slept together. Not in the way that phrase usually implied. Instead, we'd talked until the early hours, curled up on his couch with glasses of wine that went mostly untouched. He'd told me about his childhood, about a mother who'd left without explanation, about a father who'd taught him that love was weakness. I'd told him about mine. About watching my parents' dreams crumble under the weight of debt. About becoming a mother to Ethan at 17. About the fear that never quite went away no matter how hard I worked. Somewhere around 3 a.m., exhaustion had claimed us both. He'd carried me to his bed, and I'd been too tired to protest. Too comfortable in his arms to want anything else. Now, watching him sleep, I felt something dangerous blooming in my chest. I was falling for Damien Russo, and Ricardo Vance was going to use that against both of us. You're staring. Damien's voice was rough with sleep, his eyes still closed. You're hard not to stare at. One blue eye opened, followed by a smile that made my heart stutter. Flattery? From you? I must be dreaming. Don't get used to it. He pulled me closer, burying his face in my hair. Too late. I'm already addicted. We lay there in comfortable silence, the city waking up beyond the windows. For a few perfect minutes, I let myself pretend this was real. That we were just two normal people, falling in love without complications or threats or criminal empires hanging over our heads. Then my phone buzzed. I reached for it instinctively, and my blood turned to ice when I saw the message. Remember our conversation? I'll be in touch soon. What is it? Damien had felt me tense. Nothing. Just Ethan checking in. I forced a smile. I should probably get home. He worries. Damien studied me with those perceptive eyes. I could see him weighing my words, searching for the lie beneath them. I'll have Marco drive you. I can take a cab. You'll take Marco. His voice left no room for argument. Until I know what Ricardo is planning, I want you protected. The irony nearly choked me. He wanted to protect me from the very man who was using me to destroy him. Damien, about last night, don't. He pressed a finger to my lips. Don't tell me it was a mistake. Don't say we need to be professional. Don't give me any of the reasonable, logical arguments for why this can't work. I wasn't going to. Then what? I looked at him, this man who'd bulldozed into my life and turned everything upside down, who'd shown me glimpses of tenderness beneath his frozen exterior, who was offering me something I'd never dared to hope for. I was going to say thank you, I whispered, for letting me see the real you. Something cracked in his expression. He kissed me, soft and sweet, with none of the urgency from the terrace. Tonight, he said against my lips. Dinner. Just us. No galas, no business, no pretense. Okay. Okay. He smiled, and it transformed his face. Now, go check on your brother before he sends a search party. Ethan was waiting when I got home. He sat at the kitchen table, arms crossed, expression thunderous. The same look he'd given me when I'd come home late from shifts, when I'd forgotten to buy groceries, when I'd done anything that suggested I was human and fallible. Where were you? Work event. I texted you. You texted that you'd be late. Not that you'd be gone all night. His eyes dropped to my wrinkled dress, the heels in my hand. Did you sleep with him? That's none of your business. It is when your boss is a criminal. Then shot to his feet. Liv, what are you doing? This isn't like you. You don't know what I'm like. You know the version of me that takes care of you, that works double shifts, that never does anything for herself. My voice cracked. Maybe I wanted one night to feel like a normal person. Is that so wrong? It's wrong when it's with Damien Russo. The name hung between us like an accusation. Ethan didn't know the half of it. Didn't know about Ricardo's threats, about the impossible position I was trapped in, about the fact that being with Damien might be the only thing keeping both of us alive. I know what I'm doing, I said quietly. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're falling for a guy who could destroy us without breaking a sweat. He won't hurt us. How do you know? Because he cares about me. The words sounded naive even to my own ears. I know you don't believe that. I know it sounds crazy. But there's more to Damien than his reputation. Finn stared at me for a long moment. Then he grabbed his backpack and headed for the door. I hope you're right, Liv. Because if you're wrong, we're both screwed. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone with my guilt and my fear. The next week was a masterclass in living a double life. By day, I was Damien's assistant, managing his schedule and attending meetings and pretending nothing had changed between us. By night, I was something else entirely. His dinner companion. His confidant. The woman who shared his bed and learned the secrets he'd never told anyone. That I discovered that he couldn't sleep without white noise. That he read poetry when he thought no one was watching. That he kept a photo of his mother in his desk drawer. Despite claiming he'd forgotten her face, he discovered that I talked in my sleep. That I couldn't resist chocolate in any form. That I cried at commercials for animal shelters and pretended I had allergies. We were building something. Something real and fragile and terrifying, and Ricardo Vance was waiting to destroy it. His second message came on a Tuesday. Time's up. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on 52nd, 3 p.m. Come alone. I stared at the phone, my hands trembling. I couldn't ignore him. Couldn't risk Ethan's safety. But meeting him felt like walking into a trap. Everything okay? I looked up to find Damien watching me from the doorway of my office. He'd stopped by to invite me to lunch, something he'd been doing more frequently. Small gestures that meant everything. Fine. Just scheduling conflicts. You've been distracted lately. More than usual. He moved closer, perching on the edge of my desk. If something's bothering you, nothing's bothering me. Olivia. His hand found my chin, tilting my face up. I've learned to read you over the past month. The way your forehead creases when you're worried. The way you bite your lip when you're hiding something. His eyes searched mine. What aren't you telling me? Everything. I wasn't telling him everything. I'm just tired, I managed. This job, us, trying to keep things normal with Ethan. It's a lot. Then let me help. Move into the penthouse. Both of you. Ethan can have his own room, his own space. You won't have to worry about rent or commuting or, Damien, stop. I pulled away from his touch. I can't just uproot my brother's life because things are getting hard. Why not? Can give you both security. Stability. And what happens in 2 months when my contract ends? When this arrangement is over? Silence. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or realization. Is that what you think? His voice was quiet. That I'm going to let you walk away when 3 months are up? That was the deal. The deal was before I fell in love with you. The words hit me like a physical force. I stared at him, searching for deception, for manipulation, for any sign that this was just another game. I found nothing but raw honesty. You love me, I repeated stupidly. I love you. He took my hands in his. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. I know I'm probably the last person you should trust. But I love you, Olivia Harper. And I want to build a life with you. Tears burned my eyes. Happy tears, terrified tears, I couldn't tell the difference anymore. Damien, there's something I need to tell you. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Ricardo Vance. He approached me at the gala. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. He threatened Ethan. Said he'd hurt him if I didn't help him destroy you. Damien went very still. The warmth in his eyes crystallized into something cold and deadly. What exactly did he say? That he wants to use me against you. That he knows about Ethan's school, his schedule, everything. My voice broke. I've been so scared, Damien. I didn't know what to do. Why didn't you tell me immediately? 'Cause he said if I told you, he'd hurt Ethan. Because I didn't know if I could trust you. Because I was terrified of making things worse. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was ice. Ricardo Vance just made the biggest mistake of his life. Damien, please. Don't do anything that puts Ethan at risk. I won't. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I thought about everything we'd shared. The vulnerability he'd shown me. The love he'd just confessed. Yes, I whispered. I trust you. Then let me handle Ricardo. He pulled back to look at me. And tomorrow, when he expects you at that coffee shop, you're going to be there. But you won't be alone. What are you planning? Justice. His smile was sharp as a blade. Long overdue justice. The coffee shop on 52nd Street was small and unremarkable, wooden tables, mismatched chairs, the smell of roasted beans hanging heavy in the air. The kind of place that blended into the city, forgettable among 1,000 similar establishments. Perfect location for a secret meeting or a trap. I arrived at exactly 3 p.m., my heart hammering against my ribs. To anyone watching, I looked like any other New Yorker grabbing an afternoon caffeine fix. Simple jeans, warm coat, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. No one would guess that I was wired. Can you hear me? I murmured, pretending to adjust my scarf. Damien's voice came through the tiny earpiece, calm and steady. Loud and clear. I'm across the street with Enzo and a full team. The moment things go sideways, we move. And if Ricardo has people watching, then they'll see a woman alone doing exactly what he demanded. Nothing suspicious. A pause. You don't have to do this, Olivia. We can find another way. There is no other way. He'll know if I don't show up. He'll go after Ethan. Ethan is safe. I have 4 men on him as we speak. Ricardo doesn't know that. And I need to keep it that way until you have what you need. Silence. Then, quietly, I love you. I love you too. I pushed open the coffee shop door. Let's finish this. Ricardo was already inside, seated at a corner table with a clear view of both exits. He wore a charcoal suit, his manufactured smile firmly in place. 2 men sat at nearby tables, obviously his security despite their attempts at casual dress. Olivia. He rose as I approached, gesturing to the seat across from him. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? There's always a choice. You just made the smart one. He waited until I sat before lowering himself back into his chair. Can I get you something? Coffee? Tea? They make an excellent cappuccino. I'm not here for small talk. What do you want? Direct. I appreciate that. He folded his hands on the table. I want information. Damien's schedule for the next 2 weeks. His security protocols. The location of his safe houses. And why would I give you any of that? Because your brother's continued good health depends on it. Ricardo's smile never wavered. I understand he has a football game this Saturday. It would be tragic if something happened on his way there. Rage burned in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. If I give you this information, Damien will know it came from me. Not necessarily. I'm very good at making things look like accidents. Or coincidences. He leaned forward. All I need is a crack in his armor. A moment of vulnerability. You can provide that. And then what? You kill him? I remove a competitor. There's a difference. Ricardo shrugged. Business is business, Olivia. Surely you understand that. I understand that you're asking me to betray someone who trusts me. I'm asking you to choose Damien Russo or your brother. His eyes hardened. It's a simple calculation. One life against another. Surely your flesh and blood means more than a man you've known for barely a month. The wire was recording everything. Every threat, every admission, every piece of evidence that would bury Ricardo Vance forever. I just needed to keep him talking a little longer. How do I know you'll leave Ethan alone after I give you what you want? You have my word. Your word means nothing. Then consider this. If I wanted your brother dead, he'd already be dead. I'm offering a transaction, not a threat. Ricardo spread his hands. Give me what I need and we both walk away happy. Refuse and well what? Use your imagination. His smile turned cruel. I understand you're quite creative. Art history major, weren't you? Before poverty crushed your dreams. Before I could respond, the door opened behind me. Ricardo's expression shifted, surprise flickering across his manufactured features. His security guards tensed, hands moving toward concealed weapons. I hope I'm not interrupting. Damien's voice sent ice down my spine. Not because I was afraid of him, but because his tone promised violence in a way I'd never heard before. He walked past me without acknowledgement, pulling out a chair and settling into it with casual grace. His blue eyes fixed on Ricardo with predatory intensity. Damien. Ricardo recovered quickly, his smile snapping back into place. What an unexpected surprise. Is it? You've been threatening my assistant for weeks. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. Damien reached into his jacket and produced a phone, setting it on the table. I have recordings. Every conversation. Every threat. Every mention of her brother's name. Ricardo's composure cracked. Just for a moment, but I saw it. Fear flickering beneath the polished surface. Whatever she's told you, she's told me everything. And more importantly, she's told the other families. Damien smiled, cold and sharp. They're very interested in your methods, Ricardo. Threatening civilians. Targeting children. It's not good for business. The council won't, the council already has. Emergency session this morning. Damien leaned forward. You're finished, Ricardo. Your territory is being divided as we speak. Your assets frozen. Your men scattered. You can't do this. I already have. Damien rose from his chair, buttoning his jacket with deliberate care. You made a mistake when you threatened Olivia. A bigger mistake when you threatened her brother. And now you're going to pay for both. Ricardo shot to his feet, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over, Russo. I still have allies. I still have resources. You'll do nothing. Damien's voice dropped to something terrifying. Because if you so much as look at Olivia or her brother again, I won't involve the council. I'll handle you myself. Personally. Slowly. He stepped closer. Do you understand me? Coffee shop had gone silent. Ricardo's guards stood frozen, clearly unsure whether to act. The other customers had fled or pressed themselves against the walls, sensing the violence crackling in the air. Do you understand me? Damien repeated. Yes. The word came out strangled. Defeated. Good. Damien turned his back on Ricardo, a deliberate insult. Enzo, take out the trash. Enzo appeared from somewhere behind me, flanked by men I recognized from Russo Tower security. They surrounded Ricardo and his guards with practiced efficiency. Damien. Ricardo's voice cracked. We can make a deal. I have information. Things you'd want to know. About your mother. About why she really left. Damien froze, the silence stretched, heavy with implication. I saw something flicker across his face. Pain quickly suppressed. My mother left because she was weak, he said finally. Because she couldn't handle the life she'd chosen. There's nothing you could tell me that would change that. Are you sure? Ricardo's desperation made him bold. Because I know where she is. I know why she ran. And I know it had nothing to do with weakness. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself why your father never pursued her. Why he let her go so easily. Why he told you she was dead when she was very much alive. Damien turned slowly. His expression was unreadable, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had clenched into fists. You have 5 seconds to explain yourself. Your mother didn't abandon you, Damien. She was driven out, threatened, told that if she didn't disappear, you would be killed. Ricardo's smile returned, sensing he'd found leverage. Your father made a deal with my family. Isabella's exile in exchange for territory. You were the collateral. You're lying, Damien repeated, but his voice wavered. I have proof. Documents, recordings, everything your father hid from you. Let me go and it's yours. The moment stretched like a wire about to snap. I watched Damien struggle with something I couldn't understand. His past, his pain, the foundation of everything he believed about himself crumbling under Ricardo's words. Then he straightened and the ice returned to his eyes. Take him. Damien, take him. His voice left no room for argument. If he has proof, we'll find it without his help. And when we do, he'll still pay for every threat he made against Olivia. Enzo's men moved forward, seizing Ricardo with efficient force. His protests echoed through the coffee shop as they dragged him toward the door. You'll regret this, Russo. You'll never know the truth. Your father betrayed you and you'll never. The door closed, cutting off his words. Silence. Damien stood motionless in the center of the coffee shop. I could see him processing, compartmentalizing, forcing down whatever Ricardo's revelation had stirred up. Damien. I rose from my chair and moved to his side. Are you okay? I'm fine. You're not fine. What Ricardo said about your mother was probably a lie. Desperate words from a desperate man. He finally looked at me, and I saw the effort it cost him to maintain composure. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're safe. Ethan is safe. Ricardo can't hurt either of you anymore. It matters to me. You matter to me. I took his hand. If there's any chance he was telling the truth, then I'll deal with it. Later. When you're not standing in a coffee shop that just became a crime scene. A ghost of his usual humor flickered across his face. The owner is going to have questions. Enzo will handle it. He handles everything. He does, doesn't he? Damien pulled me closer, wrapping his arms around me. I'm sorry. For dragging you into this. For putting you in danger. You didn't drag me anywhere. I spilled coffee on your suit, remember? Best coffee spill of my life. He kissed my forehead. Let's go home. Home. The word felt different now. Warmer. More real. Okay, I whispered. Let's go home. The truth about Isabella Russo came 3 weeks later. Damien's investigators had torn through Ricardo's files, his properties, his digital footprint. What they found changed everything we thought we knew about the Russo family history. I was there when Damien read the documents for the first time. We sat in his study, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows like scattered diamonds. He held the folder with hands that trembled slightly, the only sign of the earthquake happening inside him. My father made a deal, he said quietly. 23 years ago. Ricardo's father wanted Russo territory in Queens. My father wanted to expand into New Jersey. Neither could afford a war. So they traded. They traded. His voice was hollow. My mother for territory. She found out about some of my father's more extreme business practices. Threatened to go to the authorities. So he made her disappear. She didn't abandon you. No. She was given a choice. Leave and never contact me again or watch me die. Damien's jaw tightened. She chose to let me live. And my father told me she was dead because it was easier than explaining what he'd done. I moved closer, settling beside him on the leather couch. Where is she now? Tuscany. A small village outside Florence. He pulled a photograph from the folder. A woman with dark hair and familiar blue eyes, older now but still beautiful, standing in a garden bursting with flowers. She remarried. Has 2 other children. A life that doesn't include me. She might want to see you. She might not. I'm a reminder of everything she lost. Everything she was forced to give up. He set the photograph down with careful precision. I've spent my whole life hating a woman who sacrificed everything to protect me. How do I reconcile that? You don't have to reconcile it tonight, or tomorrow, or next month. I took his hand, feeling the tension vibrating through him. Some wounds take time to heal. The important thing is that now you know the truth. The truth. He laughed bitterly. The truth is that my father was a monster. That he traded his wife like property and raised his son to become exactly like him. You're nothing like him. Aren't I? I threatened you into working for me. I used my power to control your life, your choices. You offered me a job when I had no other options. You protected my brother when he was in danger. You fell in love with a woman who poured coffee on your $10,000 suit. I cupped his face in my hands, forcing him to meet my eyes. You are not your father, Damien. The fact that this revelation hurts you proves that. How? Because a monster wouldn't care. A monster would shrug and move on, focused only on power and territory and revenge. I brushed my thumb across his cheekbone. You care. That's what makes you different. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled me into his arms, burying his face in my hair. I don't know what I'd do without you, he murmured. Lucky for you, you'll never have to find out. We stayed like that as the night deepened around us. 2 people clinging to each other in a world that had tried so hard to break them both. Finding strength in vulnerability. Finding hope in honesty, finding home in each other. Christmas arrived with unexpected joy. The penthouse had been transformed. A massive tree dominated the living room, decorated with lights and ornaments that Mrs. Castellano had pulled from storage. Garlands wound up the staircase. Candles flickered on every surface, and for the first time in years, I actually felt like celebrating. Ethan had moved into the penthouse 2 weeks earlier, reluctantly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm as he discovered the building's gym, game room, and endless supply of food. His hostility toward Damien had thawed into grudging respect after the Ricardo situation, and then into something approaching friendship when Damien had secured him an interview with Columbia's football coach. This is ridiculous, Ethan said, staring at the pile of presents beneath the tree. There's like 50 boxes here. 63, Damien corrected from his position on the couch, where I was curled against his side. I counted. You can't just buy us 63 presents. I can buy whatever I want. That's the benefit of being obscenely wealthy. Damien's lips twitched. Besides, most of them are for your sister. I only got you 12. Only 12. Great. But Ethan was smiling as he said it. Can we open them now? It's Christmas morning. That's traditionally when presents are opened. The next hour was chaos. Wrapping paper flying everywhere. Exclamations of surprise and delight. Ethan's genuine shock when he opened the box containing a full Columbia football scholarship, arranged by Damien through channels I didn't want to examine too closely. This is too much, my brother said, his voice rough with emotion. It's exactly enough, Damien replied. You have talent, Ethan. You deserve a chance to develop it without worrying about money. Thank you. I mean it. Thank you. They shook hands, and I saw something pass between them. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of something that might someday become family, and why own presents were equally overwhelming. a first edition collection of art history books that must have cost a fortune, enrollment confirmation for Columbia's spring semester, my remaining tuition paid in full, a necklace that looked suspiciously like the one I'd admired in a magazine weeks ago, when I'd thought no one was watching. You noticed that? I touched the delicate gold chain, the small emerald pendant that matched my eyes. I notice everything about you. Damien pulled a final box from behind the tree. But I saved the best for last. The box was small. Velvet. The kind of box that only held one thing, and my heart stopped. Damien, before you say anything, let me speak. He shifted to face me, taking my hands in his. 3 months ago, you walked into my life and upended everything I thought I knew. You challenged me, infuriated me, made me question every assumption I'd ever made about people and trust and love. I also ruined your suit. You also ruined my suit. He smiled, but his eyes were serious. I told you once that I collect interesting things. Art, rare books, unusual experiences. But I was wrong. I don't want to collect you, Olivia. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're beside me. I want to grow old watching you chase your dreams and supporting you every step of the way. He opened the box. Inside, a ring sparkled against black velvet. A central diamond surrounded by smaller emeralds, set in a band of white gold so delicate it looked like lacework. Marry me, he said. Not because of contracts or arrangements or debts. Not because I can give you money or security or any of the things that brought us together in the first place. Marry me because you love me. Because I love you. Because together we're better than we ever were apart. Ethan had gone very still across the room. I could feel his eyes on me, waiting for my answer with almost as much anticipation as Damien. Yes. The word came easily. Naturally. The truest thing I'd ever said. Yes. Damien's voice cracked with hope. Yes, I'll marry you, Damien Russo. I laughed through tears. Even though you're impossible and demanding and you have the emotional range of a glacier. Had. Past tense. He slipped the ring onto my finger with trembling hands. You've thawed me considerably. I've done my best. Kissed me, and it felt like coming home. Behind us, Ethan made exaggerated gagging sounds. Can you two not do that while I'm in the room? Get used to it, Damien said against my lips. I plan to kiss your sister frequently for the rest of our lives. Gross? Extremely gross, I agreed. But also wonderful. We were married on a warm spring day in the garden of Damien's grandmother's estate. The venue was significant. I want to grow old watching you chase your dreams and supporting you every step of the way. He opened the box. Inside, a ring sparkled against black velvet. A central diamond surrounded by smaller emeralds, set in a band of white gold so delicate it looked like lacework. Marry me, he said. Not because of contracts or arrangements or debts. Not because I can give you money or security or any of the things that brought us together in the first place. Marry me because you love me. Because I love you. Because together we're better than we ever were apart. Ethan had gone very still across the room. I could feel his eyes on me, waiting for my answer with almost as much anticipation as Damien. Yes. The word came easily. Naturally. Not the penthouse, not Russo Tower, not any of the symbols of his power and wealth. Instead, we chose the place where his happiest childhood memories lived. The place where he'd learned that love was possible, even in a family built on shadows. The guest list was small. Enzo served as best man, his usual humor tempered by genuine emotion as he watched his cousin pledge his life to me. Bianca stood as my maid of honor, still unable to believe that her friend had somehow ended up here. Mrs. Castellano wept into her handkerchief through the entire ceremony, and in the front row, a woman with dark hair and familiar blue eyes watched with tears streaming down her face. Isabella Russo had come home. The reunion had happened 3 months earlier. A tentative phone call that became a video chat that became a flight across the Atlantic. Mother and son had sat in this same garden for hours, talking, crying, beginning the long process of healing decades of hurt. She wasn't part of our lives yet. Not fully. The wounds ran too deep for easy forgiveness. But she was here, watching her son marry the woman he loved, taking the first steps towards something that might someday become reconciliation. It was enough. For now, it was enough. Damien, take you, Olivia, to be my wife, Damien said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. To have and to hold from this day forward. For better, for worse. For richer, for poorer. In sickness and in health. To love and to cherish until death do us part. Olivia, take you, Damien, to be my husband, I replied, my voice cracking on the words. To have and to hold from this day forward. For better, for worse. 4 coffee-stained suits and dramatic entrances and everything in between. To love and to cherish until death do us part. Quiet laughter rippled through our guests at the amended vows. Damien's smile widened. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant announced. You may kiss the bride. Damien pulled me close, his lips finding mine in a kiss that promised forever. Around us, applause erupted. Enzo whistled loudly. Ethan rolled his eyes but clapped along with everyone else. And somewhere in the front row, Isabella Russo smiled through her tears. Hello, wife, Damien murmured against my lips. Hello, husband. Any regrets? I looked at him. This man who'd bulldozed into my life and turned everything upside down. Who'd threatened and protected and infuriated and loved me in equal measure. Who'd given me back my dreams and my brother's future and a family I'd never expected to find. Just one, I said, his brow furrowed. What? I should have spilled that coffee sooner. His laugh was bright and free, the sound of a man who'd finally found his way out of the shadows. He kissed me again, deeper this time, a promise of all the years to come. 1 year later, I stood in the nursery of our Brooklyn brownstone, watching my husband rock our daughter to sleep. Sophia Isabella Russo had arrived on a snowy January night, screaming her displeasure at being evicted from her comfortable home. She had her father's dark hair and my green eyes and a personality that suggested she would be as stubborn as both of us combined. Damien was hopeless with her. Absolutely, completely, wonderfully hopeless. He sang Italian lullabies off-key. He panicked at every hiccup. He'd already bought enough toys to fill 3 nurseries and showed no signs of stopping. He was, in short, the most devoted father I'd ever seen. She's asleep, he whispered, carefully transferring Sophia to her crib. Finally. You know she's going to wake up in 3 hours demanding food. Then I'll feed her. And rock her. And sing to her until she falls asleep again. He joined me at the window, wrapping his arms around my waist. Have I mentioned lately that I love our life? Once or twice. Per hour. It bears repeating. He pressed a kiss to my neck. I love our life. I love our daughter. I love you. I love you too. I leaned back against his chest. Even when you buy her another ridiculous outfit. That tutu was adorable. She's 2 months old. She can't even sit up yet. She'll grow into it. I laughed, and the sound blended with the soft music playing from the speaker, with Sophia's gentle breathing, with the heartbeat of the man I loved outside. Snow fell over Brooklyn, blanketing the city in white. Somewhere out there, Ethan was finishing his first year at Columbia, thriving in ways I'd only dreamed of. Enzo was planning his own wedding to a woman who'd somehow seen past his jokes to the good man beneath. And Isabella was building a relationship with her grandchild, one careful visit at a time. Our family was complicated. Imperfect. Built on foundations that should have crumbled long ago, but it was ours. And it was beautiful. Happy. Damien asked. I turned in his arms, looking up at the face that had become my whole world. Deliriously, I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. It had started with a spilled coffee and a threat, with a debt I couldn't pay and a deal I couldn't refuse, with a man who'd grabbed my wrist and said I'd work it off. I'd worked it off, all right. in ways neither of us had expected, and I'd gained something worth more than any $10,000 suit. I'd gained everything. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. If you enjoyed She Spilled Coffee on His $10,000 Suit, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling stories. Your comments mean the world to me. Let me know what you thought and what kind of stories you'd like to see next. Until next time, keep reading and stay mysterious.